Masechet Baba Mesia, Daf Ayin He, in which we plan to complete Perek Ezehu Neshech, considered one of the most difficult Perakim in Shas. We begin with a Mishnah that has some basic principles that would have been useful and that we needed all the way at the beginning. We did already introduce these principles, but actually here is the source of them. Lo yomar Adam lachavero halveni kod chitin vani aten lecha lagoden. Aval omer lo halveni al shevo bini al she imsa mafteach v'hilel Oser. A person may not tell his friend, lend me a quart of wheat now, and I will pay you back also a quart of wheat later on at the time when the wheat is brought to the granary. I don't have any wheat now. I need some wheat now. I'll pay you back later after some more wheat is available. Now, even though it's the same quart that he's borrowing and lending, it's still prohibited mid-rabanan, because the value of a quart may be cheap now and may go up later, in which case he is borrowing something worth less, and then for the benefit of being able to use it in the meantime, he's paying back more later. Now this is only ribit midrabanan, because it would only be doraita if you set a fixed amount. I'm giving you this quart now, and I'm going to give you 10% more when I pay it back. If you fix a amount that is in fact more, then that would be doraita. This just looks like ribit, so the rabbi said to avoid this and prohibited. This is what's called se'ah bese'ah. However, one is permitted to say, lend me a quart of wheat now, and I have a quart, I do own wheat, but I don't have access to it. My son has it and he's bringing it, but I need some wheat now because I need to make some bread. Or I have wheat, it's in my storehouse, but I lost the key. Until I find the key, I don't want to break it down. So can you lend me? So this is the principle of yeshlo. If you have wheat in your ownership, in your possession, then you can borrow wheat, because it doesn't matter. Even if it goes up, I'm just returning wheat. I'm giving you wheat that I already have. It really doesn't matter what the price is. I have a quart of wheat, and so I can readily give it to you. It's just not available right now, but I have it in my possession. However, Hillel says even this is prohibited. V'chen haya Hillel, even if yeshlo, it's still prohibited. V'chen haya Hillel omer, lo talve isha kikar lechaberta ad sheta'aseha damim, shema yukru chitin v'nimsu ba'ot lidei rebit. Hillel adds, this is not only true regarding grain and big items where people tend to do business with that, but even on a small personal level, if a woman wants to borrow some bread, just a loaf of bread, or lend it to her friend until and then says, okay, and you'll pay me back a loaf of bread tomorrow. That's prohibited unless you establish the monetary value, because it could be in the meantime that the value of wheat will go up, and then that will be the beat. If one woman gives a loaf of bread today when it's worth $5, and then she gives back, returns a loaf of bread tomorrow when it's $5.10. The price went up a little bit. That will be the beat. Rather, you have to say today, here's a loaf of bread. What's the value today? $5. Okay, you have to pay me back $5, and then she could give back $5 or something that's the value of $5, but it can't be the same item itself. So Hillel says that, and this is true, even if you have something in stock, it's still prohibited. Hillel is very strict in this regard. The Gemara will begin by discussing how much wheat do you have to have in stock, yeshlo, in order to borrow wheat. The same amount or even less. Amar Rav Huna, yeshlo se'ah lo ve'se'ah, sa'ataim lo ve'sa'ataim. According to Rav Huna, he's stricter. And he says, if you have one se'ah in the storehouse, but you just don't have the key, you don't have access to it, so you can borrow one se'ah. If you have two in the storehouse, you can borrow two. He's seeing it in effect as, listen, give me this se'ah because I need it right now, it's available, and that se'ah that's in the storehouse, that'll be yours. And so we're just exchanging it currently, and so therefore it doesn't matter if the price goes up, but you have to have the same amount in the storehouse as what you're borrowing, or more in the storehouse. Can't have less. Rabbi Yitzchak omer afilu yesh lo se'ah lo ve'aleha kama korin. Rabbi Yitzchak is more lenient, and he says even if you have just one se'ah in the storehouse that's locked up, but you don't have access to it, you can borrow many quart of wheat for that. 10, 20 korin. Now, so it doesn't have to be equal. So he is not seeing it as, well, that cord is yours, we're just exchanging. Rather, he's saying, listen, I'm borrowing wheat from you, but for any one cord of wheat that you're lending me, I could pay you back right now. I could pay you back because I have one cord. Now, I don't have to pay you back right now. I'm not actually giving it to you or exchanging it. But since I can, for each one, any single one, I could say, well, you can lend me this because I have a cord that I could pay you back right now, even if the price goes up. So since you can justify every single cord that you get, you can even get many cords of wheat with just one. And again, he's going to be lenient because it's only to the banan. It's just that this looks like interest. It may lead to interest, but it's not actually interest. So as long as you have this way out, it's permitted. Taneh Rabbi Chiya l'Sayu'er Rabbi Yitzchak tipat yain en lo tipat shemen en lo hayesh lo love aleha kame tipin. Rabbi Chiya brought a baraita that supports the lenient view of Rabbi Yitzchak. The baraita says if you do not even have a drop of wine or you do not even have a drop of oil, then you're not allowed to borrow any wine or any oil, and then agree to pay back that same amount. You borrow a gallon of wine, I'll pay you back a gallon of wine later, is prohibited. So we see that's only prohibited if you don't even have one drop. But what if you do have even a very small amount of wine or a very small amount of oil, then you can borrow. Obviously, not just borrowing one drop of oil, you can borrow a lot of oil or a lot of wine. As long as you just have a little bit, you can rely on that to say, yesh lo. והלל אוסר, אמר רב נחמן אמר שמואל, הלכה כדברי הלל, ולא תלכתה כבתה. Hillel says, even if yesh lo, it's still prohibited. Shmuel says halacha follows Hillel. However, a later opinion says, no, halacha is not like Hillel. This is not Hillel against Shammai, this is Hillel against Chachamim. And so we do not follow Hillel, and throughout this Perek, we were always assuming that yesh lo, if you have something in stock, then you are permitted to borrow and pay back se'ah b'se'ah. V'chen haya Hillel omer lo talvei isha. Now this is the second thing that Hillel agrees about. Not only is he more machmir regarding yesh lo, but also regarding the amount. Even if it's a small amount, just one loaf between two housewives is prohibited. Not only large amount between farmers. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel Zod Divrei Hillel, אבל חכמים אומרים לווים סתם ופורעים סתם. So Rav Yehuda, name of Shemuel, says that this is only the opinion of Hillel. However, Chachamim disagree and say that you can borrow different food items without specifying how much they're worth, and you can return the same item. Since it's a small amount, people are not particular about it. If I borrow a cup of flour and I return a cup of flour, it doesn't have to be exact measurement of a cup of flour. It's just about this much, about that much. And so since people are not particular, even if I return to you a little more than you gave me, it's just because I'm giving you it as a gift. You're not particular to say, oh, make sure that you pay me a little more. How many days did you not pay me back the flour? You have to add this much more. In general, we don't care if you pay back a little more, a little less, later, earlier. We forego all of that. And therefore, any little bit more that might be there is not considered interest. It's just considered a gift. Nobody cares about it. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, bnei chabura makpidin ze al ze, obrin mishum midah, mishum mishkal, mishum minyan, mishum lovin uporin biyom tov, uchtivrei Hillel af mishum rebit. So Rav Yehuda Amar, in the name of Shemuel, now adds, based on that if you have a group of people that eat together, it's an eating club, and they all chip in, and they make food together and eat it together. Now this will be a problem on Shabbat. If they're very particular about each other, you have to bring 3 grams of sugar. You have to bring 3 grams of salt, and you can't go over and you can't go under. Well then, if they eat together on Shabbat, that will be a problem of measuring or weighing or counting. Now generally, you can just measure in a general way, like, a sprinkle of salt, you can put onto something, you can put, a spoonful of sugar, but you cannot measure precisely. The reason why you cannot use tools to measure precisely on Shabbat is because then you may come to write it down if you're so careful and you really need to know exactly. So there is a general prohibition of measuring on Shabbat. If people are not particular and they don't care, you just bring, some grapes and you bring some watermelon, watermelon, and it doesn't really matter. It's just, about the same amount, but we're not counting how many grapes you brought and how many blueberries you brought. So as long as you're not particular, then you're not measuring precisely. That's permitted. But if the people are so particular that they're measuring so precisely, then that would be considered measuring, and it would be prohibited regarding Shabbat for measurement. And also, it would be prohibited as lending and repaying on Yom Tov. You can't borrow and repay. And if you're so particular, you got this exact amount, okay, you have to give me back that precise amount. Well, that would be doing business on Yom Tov, because it's not just here, have some of my strawberries. This is, I'm lending you and I want the exact amount back. And if you follow Hillel, then it would also be a problem of interest, because he said that it's prohibited even small amounts of food to borrow and pay back the same amount. Because he felt that was also like se'ah b'se'ah, food for food, even though it's not large scale, that would generally be for business. It will be prohibited according to Hillel, also because of ribit. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Tamidei Chachamim mutarim lilvot zeh mizeh beribit, mai tama medayad ed ribit asura, umatanahu deyahabu ahadadeh. Amar leShmuel Abu Abar Ihi, helveni me'ah pilpilin b'me'ah ve'asrin pilpilin va'arich. So Rav Yehuda, in the name of Shemuel, same sage we just saw, says that Torah scholars are permitted to borrow from each other with interest. Why? It's a Doraita prohibition. What does he mean? He says because they know the halacha so well, and they know that interest is prohibited to receive or to give. Therefore, they don't consider it interest, they consider it a gift, right? They know the law well enough that they can distinguish. Listen, I'm giving you $100, you pay me back $100, and you'll agree that you'll give me a $10 gift. And so I have in mind that it's a gift, and you have in mind that it's a gift, and we both know for sure. And if I took you to court, we say, that's a gift. You don't have to pay that amount. So because we can keep in mind that fine distinction between interest and a gift, so then, therefore, Torah sages are permitted to borrow and lend with interest because they're not considering it interest. Whereas a regular person will forget the distinction and think of it as interest, and then it will be prohibited. As an example of this, Shemuel told the father of Barihi, who was a Talmid Chacham, "Can you lend me 100 peppers now, and I will give you 120 peppers later?" This is permitted. The word arich here is understood as fitting, is permitted. I wonder if it might mean arich, long peppers, right? Not just 100 more peppers, but I'm going to even give you better quality, longer peppers. So this is permitted because they understood that it's 100 for 100. That's the loan, and is going to pay back 100. And the extra 20 peppers are a gift and is not considered interest. So therefore, since they are Talmidei Chachamim, that's permitted. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, mutar lo le'adam lahalvot banav u'bnei beto beribit, kedei lat'iman ta'am ribit, ve'lav milatahi mishum da'ateh lemisrach. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, one is permitted to lend money to his children and the members of his household with interest. A father can collect interest from his kids. Why? In order so that they will taste how bitter interest is. They're going to borrow $100. They're going to be so happy. Oh, I got $100, and then it's going to come time to pay. It's going to charge them $150. They're going to have to pay back. This is what? That's not fair. How am I going to get $50 more? I only got $100, and they're going to see how bad it feels. And based on that, they will make sure not to do it to anybody else. It's like sometimes you give a little whiskey to a kid so that he'll spit it out and think it's disgusting, and then never will drink again. However, even though I've said this is not the halacha the later layer of the Gemara says, because they may become corrupted, right? They might like the taste of the alcohol even though they're a kid, and so this will actually be a negative. And the kid might say here, oh wow, look at that! My father gave me 100, he gets 150 without doing anything. You know how much money I could make if I charge people interest? So you might get them used to that behavior. So this strategy may actually backfire, so not a good idea. Next Mishnah. Omer Adam lachavero, nakesh ami v'nakesh imecha, ador ami ve'ador imecha. One person can say to another person, his friend is another farmer, listen, help me weed my field now, and I will help you weed your field at another time. That's okay. They're exchanging favors, even though one's now and one's later. It's the same thing. That's okay. Or till my field with me today, and I will come over next week, next month, and I will till your field with you. That's permitted. But what you cannot do is say, weed with me now, and I will till with you later, or the way around, till with me now, and I'll weed with you later. Because since those are different tasks, could be that one is easier and one is more difficult. So if I say, hey, do me a favor, it's like taking a loan, do something, an easy task with me today, and then because of that benefit that I get this upfront, and I'm only going to pay you back next month, I'll help you out, so I'll help you out with a more difficult task. Well, then that would be like interest, even though it's not money that's going back and forth or goods, but it is services. So do an easy service for me now, so that I'll do a harder service for you later. That is prohibited. Kol yemei garid ehad, kol yemei rebi'ah achat. Now we consider entire season to be one time period. So let's say if it's weed with me and I'll weed with you, you can do that as long as it's within one season. Now the entire summer, the dry season, that's all one. So if you help me in the beginning of the summer season and I help you at the end of the summer season, that's okay. Even though some days are longer and some days are shorter, but it's all one season. It's about the same, so that's permitted. And all the days of the rainy season, the entire winter is considered one, so that's fine. You can do it one day early in the season, later in the same season. What you're not allowed to do is say, you plow with me in the dry season, I'll plow with you in the rainy season. Could be two reasons. Number one, the length of the day is different. I'll help you out in the winter when the day is short, and you have to help me out an extra couple of hours in the summer when the day is long. And furthermore, the plowing is easier in one season than the other, when the ground is harder, when the ground is softer. Rabban Gamaliel Omer, Yesh ribit mukdemet v'yesh ribit me'ocheret, kesad. Natan edav lelvotemen v'hu meshaleach lo ve'omer, b'shvil shetalveni, zo hi ribit mukdemet. Rabban Gamaliel says, the standard way of charging interest is it's packaged within the deal. I'll give you 100 now, you give me 110 in a month. But Rabban Gamaliel adds, there's also such a thing as paying interest before the loan and paying interest after the loan. How so? If I am expecting that I want to borrow from you, right? I know that in a few weeks from now, I'm going to have to borrow from you. So you know what I do? I send you a gift now, before the loan. And I say, here, take this gift, take these nice flowers, so that you will lend me money. So I'm paying the interest up front, before the loan even starts. That's still prohibited. Or afterwards, could be I borrowed from you and I paid you back. And then some days later, I send you a gift. I send you some nice box of chocolates. And I say, thank you for paying me. Thank you for lending me the money. All that time that money was idle, but you couldn't use it because I was using it. Thank you so much. So, although it kind of looks like a gift, and we even said before, if it really, really is a gift, you're Talmidei Chachamim, and you know it's a gift, then it would be permitted. But most people are going to consider this interest as a thank you. It's a thank you, but really it's interest. It just happens to be paid later. So Rabban Gamaliel says it's prohibited, even if only midrabanan. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Yesh Rabbi Devarim, Lo Yomar Lo Da, Ki Ba Ish Peloni Memakom Peloni. Rabbi Shimon says interest couldn't be even just with words. If you give someone a tip, I borrowed money from you, and then I go to you say, oh, by the way, this person is coming from such a place, and that information is significant to you. This is important for your business or whatever reason. So I'm helping you out by giving you valuable information, and I also have a loan out with you. So I might be doing you that favor because I have a loan out. So that also would be considered interest. Now you might think that only the one gaining money is the lender violates, but not true. This is a special law. While for other cases like stealing, it's only the person that gains the money is the one that violates, not the victim. But here, this is a chidush that all these people violate the law. The lender and the borrower and the guarantor and the witness, and the sages say even the scribe who's writing up the contract violates. Or what do they violate? Omrim mishum lo titen. You're not allowed to give interest. Mishum lo tikach meto. Don't take interest. Mishum lo tiye lo kenoshe. Don't be like a creditor that's pressing someone to have to pay. Mishum lo tisimun alav neshech. Don't put interest upon the person and cause them to pay interest. Mishum lifnei iver lo titen michshol ve'eretam Elohecha ani Adonai. And also putting a stumbling block before a blind. We'll talk about how the ancillary people, they're not taking or giving interest like the witnesses, but they are allowing someone to violate the law. So if you help someone to violate the law, make it easier for them to do so, then you're violating Parashat HaShavua, putting a stumbling block before a blind person. It's not literally a blind person, but a person is blind to the law, and they're not they don't care about it. So you have to help them by not participating and stopping them. Tanya. רבי שמעון בן יוחאי אומר, מניין לנושה בחברו מנה, ואינו רגיל להקדים לו שלום, שאסור להקדים לו שלום, תלמוד לומר, נשך כל דבר, אשר ישך אפילו דיבור אסור. So picking up on the ריבית of devarim, Rabbi Shimon, as Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So in this Braita gives another example. How do you know that if I borrowed money from you, or if someone lent money to someone, then the borrower, if he generally doesn't greet the lender, then he's not allowed to greet him. See, if we see each other every day, all the time, all year long, and I always say, good morning, how are you? Then that's fine. Then you can continue doing that. But if you're a person that I normally don't say hello to, but all of a sudden, now that I borrowed from you, I give you a nice big hello, handshake, I give you a hug, so then that is not permitted, because I am giving you honor, that favor, because you lent me money. I have a current loan outstanding. So how do you know that that's prohibited? Because the pasuk says interest called davar. The word davar means words. So even with words, one cannot pay interest. Ve'elu obrin, amar Abaye, malveh over bechulan, loveh over mishum lo tashich lachicha, ulachicha lo tashich, v'lifnei iver lo titen michshol, arev adim en obrim ela mishum lo tesimun alav neshech. Abaye teaches that the lender violates all of the laws mentioned in the Mishnah, and the borrower, he violates other laws. Lo tashich, don't pay interest, ulachicha lo tashich, also to your brother, do not pay interest. The Mishnah did not mention these two because the Mishnah was focused on all the pisukim, all the violations that the lender goes against, but these apply only to the borrower. And the borrower also violates lifnei iver lo titen michshol, because he is allowing the lender to violate, so he is helping out and thereby putting a stumbling block before him. Now the guarantor and the witnesses, they only violate a different pasuk, do not put neshech upon a person, because they're helping out by allowing the lender to charge interest to the borrower. Tosafot points out that what about lifnei iver lo titen michshol? And they say yes, they would violate that also if the lender would have listened to them, and if they said, hey, no, don't do that, we're not going to be party to this, and then he would have stopped. If they could have stopped him, then they would violate lifnei iver. However, if he would have done it anyway, and he would have lent with different witnesses or without witnesses, and he would have done lent anyway with interest, then they don't violate that, because there's nothing that they could have done to stop him, but they still will violate lo tesimun alav neshech. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Maveh Rabbi, Jotemi Mashe Marvichim Mafsidim. Rabbi Shimon says that those who lend with interest, they lose more than they gain. They think they're gaining a little money now, but they're going to end up losing all their money as punishment. Velod ela shemesimim Moshe Rabbeinu Chacham v'Torato emet ve'omrin ilu haya yodea Moshe Rabbeinu sheyeh revach badavar lo haya kotvo. And furthermore, they cause Moshe. They declare that Moshe is a wise person and his Torah is true. This is a euphemism. It means the opposite. We don't want to say the opposite. But in effect, by charging interest, they are actually making fun of Moshe and saying he's not wise and the Torah is not true. Why? Because they're saying, we know better than the Torah law. We know better than Moshe. If Moshe would only have known how much money you could make by charging interest, Moshe would not have, surely would not have written this law, right? Moshe was not a good businessman. He was naive about this. I know better. I know I know how good it is. And so they willfully ignore this law. And so by doing so, not only are they cheating, stealing, they'll end up losing their money, they are also belittling the Torah. כי אתה רב דימי אמר, מניין לנושה בחברו מנה, ויודע שאין לו שאסור לעבור לפניו, תמוד לומר, לא תהיה לו כנושה. What does that mean? That you can't be like a creditor? So that certainly applies to trying to collect interest. But we go further in this statement. How do you know that if someone is owed money, then that the lender should not even pass in front of the borrower? You should avoid the borrower, because just passing in front of his house, so that's your way to go to work. You pass by in front of his house every day, passes by. It's going to be a reminder and an embarrassment to the borrower. Oh, I have to pay this guy back. I have to pay this guy back. Don't be like a creditor. A creditor is always showing up, calling, texting, pay me back, and causing the borrower a lot of shame and guilt. So don't do that, right? Go roundabout. Let the borrower is probably a poor person. He's distressed. He can't pay now. Be nice to him, right? And help him out. And don't put too much pressure on him. Rabbi Ameh, Rabbi Aseh, Amrei Tarvahu, Kilu dano b'shnei dinish nemar hirkabta enosh leroshenu bata ba'esh u'ba'mayim. Rabbi Aseh, add to that someone who presses someone else, a lender presses a borrower to pay, it's like he causes him two punishments, both fire and water, as it says in this pasuk. You cause men to ride over our heads, kind of belaboring it, putting this guilt on their heads that feels like going through fire and going through water. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, kol mi sheyesh lo ma'ot, u'maveh otan shelo be'adim, ober mishum lifnei iver, lo titen michshol. Rav says, if someone has money and lends it out without witnesses, they are violating, putting a stumbling block before the blind, even though you trust the person, especially when it's someone that you trust. So, I trust you, no, I'll lend it to you. But then you're causing the borrower to be tempted to not repay. Oh, there was no witnesses. You know what? Maybe I don't have to pay, or I'll pay later, or I forgot exactly how much. Was it that much? Really? I have to pay you? And so you're causing people to trip up because they may purposefully or not purposefully forget that they borrowed or how much they borrowed, and then you're just going to cause fights. So you know what? Better for both parties to document everything with witnesses so everything is clear. Veresh Lakish Amar, Gorem Kelala Asmo Shneimar, Telamna Sifte Shaker Hadoberot Al Sadik Atak. Not only will the lender who lends without witnesses tempt the borrower to not pay, but also he's causing a curse to himself, because when he comes and says, "Hey, where's my $1,000? Please pay me back," and the other guy says, "What? I didn't borrow $1,000." Now everybody's going to say, "Oh, look at this lender. He's making false accusations," and people will start cursing the lender. Meanwhile, the lender has every right. So therefore, it's better to make everything clear, document everything, write up a nice contract, so that no one forgets and no one will falsely accuse on purpose or sometimes just by mistake, just forgetfulness. I thought you said. No, always better to have a clear contract with witnesses. Amru le Rabbanan le Rav Ashe. Kame kaim Ravina koma d'amur Rabbanan. Shalach le behade panya de malesha beta lishtad li mor asara zuzeh. V'yitreme li ketina dar'a lemizban. Shalach le netemor sa'adev nichtab ketaba. Shalach le afilu ana name. Shalach le kol sheken mor. Ditrid begirse mishtele vegorem kelala le'atzmi. We have a fun story now. The rabbis told Rav Ashe, you should see Ravina. He follows everything the rabbis say. He's so careful. So Rav Ashe says, oh yeah, really? I want to test him out. This is like poor Iyov. Okay, so Rav Ashe sends a messenger to Ravina on Shabbat right before sunset when people are really busy and I don't have time for anything. And he says, can you give me a loan? I need 10 dinar because there's a little piece of land I can acquire. I need the money. Can you lend me right now? So now you'd figure he's all busy with preparing for Shabbat. He has to take a shower. He has to finish making the chulent. And so he's be like, okay, here, just take it. But he didn't do that. So instead he sent back, I'm happy to lend you, but first bring witnesses and let's write a document, and then I'm happy to do it, but only with witnesses. Even though there's only a few minutes before Shabbat, he'll take time to do that, but he's not going to lend without Shabbat, without witnesses. Rav Ashe says, even me? What, you don't trust me? You think I'm not going to pay you back? And Ravina sends back, all the more so you are the worst case, not because I don't trust you, chas v'shalom, but rather because I know you're so occupied in your Torah studies that you're concentrating on that, and you might forget the details of how much I lent and when you have to pay back, and then you'll bring a curse upon yourself because I'm going to bring a curse upon myself. I'm going to come and say, pay me back. You're going to say, well, I don't remember because you weren't thinking about it. And then people are going to say, oh, how dare you accuse Rav Ashe of lending and not paying back? Listen, I want to protect you. I want to protect myself. And all the more so a person like you, precisely because of your great stature, you're concentrating on Torah and you're not going to remember the details. So yes, 2 witnesses, even and especially for a great person. Tenor Banan, Shelosha Soakin ve'enan na'anin, ve'eluhen, mi sheyesh lo ma'ot u'mave'otan shelo be'adim. Tvareta says there are 3 categories of people. Although they cry out in prayer, their prayers will not be answered. One of them is someone who lends out money without witnesses. You put yourself into a precarious situation. Don't do something dangerous. You don't jump off a cliff and say, Hashem, please help me. Please save me from smashing on the floor. Right? You don't put yourself in a situation like that. And by lending without witnesses, that's a bad thing to do. And so the person does not, their prayers don't deserve to be answered. Please, I hope he pays me back. No, you should have gotten witnesses. Adon le'asmo. Someone who acquires a master for himself. The Gemara will discuss what that means. And someone whose wife rules over him. A henpecked husband. What does that have to do with what did he do wrong? What does that have to do with the things that came before? Rabbeinu Hananel explains that this is someone who marries a rich woman, a woman from a rich family. So he thinks he's doing good. Oh, I get a rich family, but in fact he's going to be henpecked and ruled over by his wife and her family. So he's putting himself into a precarious situation. So any troubles he has with his wife, with his in-laws, he knows what he's getting into. He brought it upon himself. Now, what does that mean to acquire a master over yourself? One interpretation is someone who attributes his property to a non-Jew, perhaps because he wants to charge interest. He's not allowed to charge interest, so he tells a non-Jew, here, you hold on to my money, and then through you, you're allowed to charge interest. You charge interest, and then it'll go back to me. So he uses the non-Jew as a kind of intermediary, but in the end, by doing that, he is giving a lot of power, transferring his money to the non-Jew, and then having a master over himself in order to try to evade the halacha. Is going to end up making his situation worse. The second interpretation is someone who gifts his property and his assets to his children while he's alive. He's doing it while he's alive. Some people do that today to avoid taxes or to be able to control which kid gets what. However, in his old age, sure, the kids will take care of their parents sufficiently well, put them in some old age home somewhere, find the cheapest one. Okay, so although he's doing a nice thing, he wants to gift everything in his lifetime, but now they are going to be in charge of his finances, and he loses all control. Or a third interpretation, someone who has bad luck in one town, and he decides to stay there, and he doesn't go to a different town. So he's putting himself at the mercy of the people in this town for whatever reason. He's not doing well there. Maybe the people don't like him, or they're giving him a hard time, and he still stays there. So he's allowing them to be masters over him. Meanwhile, he should go somewhere else, and then he'll have better luck over there. All very good advice, very practical things that happen all the time in business and personal things. I borrow your car, I fill it up with gas, and then I give it back to you. So is that interest? All very difficult situations that we have to keep in mind all the time in order to make sure that we are fulfilling this important Torah law. Hadran alach ezehu neshech chazakim uberuchim.